Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Lilienthal. I'm with the Vibrancy team, and I'm excited to be here today with Leslie Ritchie Dunham and Annabelle Membrillo Jimenez, who I'll let them introduce themselves. And we're going to discuss the really interesting project done over the course of the last couple of years with the Hartsbrook School located in South Hadley, Massachusetts. So Leslie and Annabelle, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure, Leslie Ritchie Dunham. I don't know, what do you want me to
say? Maybe just your role in the project.
Yes, so I'm on the board, currently on the board of the Hartsbrook School, and I help to shepherd this project and strategy through.
And I'm Annabelle Membrillo, and I was part of the vibrancy strategies that apply and implement the vibrancy process in this project.
Great, thank you. So maybe Leslie, since you have the closest perspective on the origin of this project, maybe you could just describe for a few minutes how this project came to be and how vibrancy came to start working with the school.
So when I joined the board, they had just were in the middle towards the end of doing a strategy process. And they were pretty excited about it, came up with what I would have called a laundry list of things that they needed to do, sort of like 16 to 20 kind of different variables. They were working at that time the kind of low-hanging fruit that didn't cost a lot of money or were fairly easy to do in only a little bit of time. But after a while, it got to the point where when it really started to involve money, it started to be a question of competing priorities and understanding where they were going to put resources in. And it became clear to me that there was no real clarity on how to make that decision. And it became clear to them that there was no real clarity on how to make that decision. I'm married to Jim, so coming from the background of understanding the work that he does and the process that he has, the strategic clarity process, and economics, I thought I could bring that in to help bring a bigger picture and a common vision that we could work from to help make those priorities and have a different understanding and what I would call a real strategy. So
yeah. Annabelle, do you have anything else to share, sort of in your perspective on the origin of this?
No, not for now.
No? Okay. So what it sounds like is that there was some work happening around the kind of a strategic planning process, which every person in an organization out there can understand the need for that, and a recognition that some of what was happening was some of what came out of that initial process didn't really answer the deeper questions about how to prioritize, make choices in an environment where there was you had to choose and make some choices. So what was it that got people interested and in the process of getting people interested in this particular process of vibrancy? And can you describe a little bit of the kind of the initial stages of that?
So I think what I was able to bring was the question of in trying to make choices and priorities, that there was a sort of lack of vision, a lack of common vision, and not and how we were going to work together, and that we all were working towards the same thing. Because at the school there's the board and there's the conference, and they have different legal and fiscal and pedagogical responsibilities, and they work together, but they sort of have their own different sets of priorities. And so the question was, how can we see a bigger thing? And I was able to bring at least the potential of seeing something bigger so that we could all work towards that together and have a kind of common understanding to help us make those choices. So that's basically the promise I made. Bring this in.
So this being able to, I think you described earlier as, and we were discussing this a sense of the bigger scene that was really exciting to people that hadn't been touched on in kind of other strategic planning processes. But there was a flip side to it, which you said required trusting.
Right.
Kind of,
so the flip side is
you go ahead.
The flip side is that they don't have a clear understanding of what's going to come out, or what even the process is going to look like. And pretty much, there's a kind of standard strategy process that everybody pretty much understands. And this process is very different. You have to trust it, because there is no assumption up front of what's going to come out of it. And even if what comes out in the end sounds similar, the fact of having gone through it offers huge insights and understanding into your own system in a way that you would not be able to get in any other way other than just going through it with this kind of methodology.
And I also, it sounded like there was also a trust in, it requires not just a trust in the process eventually, but also the trust in the people that that were really aligning around the process. So it's a both and.
Yeah, clearly, but because of not having that kind of clear understanding of what's going to come out, especially when you're making an investment of time and money, then there very deeply has to be a trust in the people who are bringing it, and sort of shepherding the process, that they have vetted it in a way that we trust them, that what's going to come out is going to be a benefit and interesting for our investment. And so we were able to build enough of that, I think, that we could bring it in. Yeah, which is great.
So do you want to talk a little bit about, unless there's anything else that we missed in terms of some of the origin and sort of the, maybe talk a little bit next about the process that you went through and some of the kind of the key steps that you took, and maybe you could, along with that, some of what people's experience was, and maybe some, so do you want to talk a little bit about the process?
Sure. So we did the stakeholder process, where to create the causal loop diagram, we had to identify the stakeholders. So we basically hired Christoph and Annabelle to come in and be the consultants. And so I and another woman, Natalie Adams, also were kind of the inside people that were driving the process and bringing this process to the school, with the help of Annabelle and Christoph. And so Annabelle and Christoph were holding the methodology, and they did it in such a way that we went through what's called the Strategic Clarity 2.0, but we did it where Natalie and I were actually doing the Strategic Clarity 2.0 process with the help of Annabelle and Christoph. And of course, they're setting it up. So they did a significant number of interviews with all the different stakeholders, both individually and in groups, to get clear on the different variables for the causal loop diagram. That is the kind of basis for the Strategic Clarity 2.0 process. So they would come and visit, and we would do a bit of the process, and then they'd go away, because both of them they live in Germany and in Mexico, and this was in Massachusetts. So they would come, and then we would work very hard on doing things sort of in between, and then they'd come again and we'd do the next step. So if I'm leaving out anything, Annabelle, please just jump right in there and say. So basically, Natalie and I did a kind of 8-day Strategic Clarity 2.0 walkthrough with the beautiful patience and guidance of Annabelle and Christoph. They're working alongside us and creating documents as we went through it. And with all the ahas and everything that brings, and the understanding of the system that brings, it was an amazing, amazing process. And we had a beautiful kind of celebration at the end with champagne. Not just surviving it, but for actually, everything that came out of it. then we brought that into the school in a sort of 3 days, slightly smaller version, quicker version of that, to get a wider group of about 15 to 20 people involved, mostly teachers, administration, and teachers and staff, and went through essentially the same process to come to these kind of leverage points and these pathways. What are the pathways that are going to work, and what are the leverage points that are going to help us on each of the pathways, and also the indicators on each of the pathways, so that we can know that we're actually working the pathway well. So that was great, and it was a nice validation because they came up with very similar pathways and pretty similar indicators and also leverage points. And so the 4 that we came up with are the governance, setting in place policies and procedures. The push point, but the push point on the governance is very interesting because it was a common understanding of our mission and our strategic vision. And so the stronger that common understanding is, then the stronger the governance can be. And the indicator is that we have complete and transparent and clear processes in our governance. And then those would help set in place a structure upon which then the next pathway would set, which was teacher investment and nourishment. The indicator on that, well, the push point on that was investment in teachers. In investment being a kind of catchphrase for both financial investment, but also mentoring and development, professional development, and all of that. And that also includes money, but it also is time and investment in by other teachers and everything. The indicator for that is that is going well, is that there's time and space. The teacher has time and space to really work on the 3rd pathway, which is meeting the child of today, of the 21st century. And with also, in the case of Hartsbrook, a sort of expanded gesture was added, which is because Hartsbrook tended to be a little bit insular. So this sort of gesture of moving out into the broader Pioneer Valley community and starting to work with other partners in education, but also in other things, including land use, because they have this amazing, beautiful 42-acre property. So meeting the child of today, the push point on that was, interestingly, the teachers having the time and space to do the work. So it's the same, what's the indicator on that pathway is also the push point on this pathway, which was very interesting that came out. And so that they have the time and space to do the work, meet the children, do the internal work and the external work to meet the child. Because in a lot of pedagogy, there's a lot of internal work. You can say spiritual work or whatever to meet each child every day. And so each teacher has to take up that internal work as well as the external preparation for each child and for the class as a whole. And the indicator for that is, for that pathway, was student retention. If we're meeting our students, then they will stay. And so how are our students staying for the full K through 12 pathway? And then that pushes on the last pathway, which isn't last, but it's sort of, moving a bit sequentially in our understanding, is sort of the meeting the family, family engagement. And so if the student is being met, then the family is more engaged. But then it's also not just, are they happy, but it's also how are they engaged in the greater community. So gets more into the community practices. So all of that can seem like those 4 things, engaging parents, engaging teachers, and obviously having good governance structures, and then how are we meeting the children, are obvious in a school, and that would be true. But what we saw was a systemic understanding of how each of those affects the other thing, and each of those affects each other and can help drive the system. And an understanding of the leverage points was useful for that, knowing where to put a priority of money and time resources. So that was pretty critical.
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia. That's a really good detailed description of it. Annabelle, do you have any insights in terms of some of you've been through, hundreds, if not thousands of projects in your career. So I'm curious about what you learned in this, or what you saw that was particularly of use to reflect on.
I mean, well, in this specific initiative, it was something that was key in the whole process is to, as in any other process, but here it was a huge sense of trusting in the wisdom of the group from the very, very beginning. So every time that we talk with people, something that was not really like name in the group was coming out. It's beginning with the deep share purpose, because in this process we were very surprised that at the end the whole purpose of everyone, that is what, including parents, I mean, including the unusual suspects that we could feel that they were not aligned through that, they were really connected with something, with a deep shared purpose, that is a big purpose, that is this evolution of humanity. And with different words, and obviously, I mean, with a healthy school form, but that was something that for me, at least individually, it was very exciting listening of what was behind, what each one of the persons that was part of the school was really connected and why they were there. So that was a huge learning from me, and to be able to be in the inquiry and really listening to what was already there but needed to be named for the group. So that's, yeah.
Beautiful. One thing I think, Leslie, you said, and then we'll wrap up in a minute, was about how there was a shift that happened once people inside, all the different people situated differently inside of the system, started seeing kind of the system and then thinking about their pieces. So I don't know if there's anything particularly more that you wanted to share about kind of some of the shift you saw when that kind of awareness started taking hold more broadly. But it feels like a key piece of this is the leverage points, but being able to see them and operate them within an awareness that's collectively held of the system that people are operating in. So just wanted to at least open to see if you had anything else to share about that particular insight, or any other shift that you noticed, from where you started to where things are today.
Well, there was a great shift in energy. So the governance task force, we initiated a governance task force work, and they did their work, and then they put in place a new structure, and it brought a lot of energy in a really great way. So it was this kind of lightening and opening gesture. And the biggest issue has actually been that all four pathways kind of popped up, and there's a lot of energy around all four of them. So the teachers are already starting in on the work of the 21st century, and the parents have all kinds of ideas that they're bringing in, and the governance is still working to get itself in place. And so all of it is kind of wanting to be worked at the same time. And so it's a little difficult sometimes to kind of go, whoa, Nelly, let's just kind of, we can't undo that. And you can't say, sorry, you have to wait. So it is a sort of management issue of the expectations and the energy, and to keep it going over time. And also, I just, from where we are right now, I just wanted to say, it's in doing this process, it's there are up and downs, because there are hard parts also, when money isn't what you hope it is, which it never is in a school, and you're still making trade-offs that you don't want to make. And even if there's a bigger or broader sense of why that trade-off might be more important. It can still feel hard, and it can still feel like, you know, we're just going through the trenches. And then it's really key to just keep remembering, you know, that it's part of this longer process, and you know, we just got to keep going and keep working it, and that there is real value in it. I mean, there's still this kind of working towards this goal, and in a certain way, you never kind of reach it as you imagine it, because then life happens. But you have to kind of stay in remember the goal and not get kind of stuck in the day-to-day grind all the time. And that's the biggest issue that I think pops up for us as a school, is that people get tired in the day-to-day, and it's hard to remember, oh yeah, we're doing this bigger thing, and just to bring that back in and bring that energy back in.
Yeah. Yeah, the work of constantly inculcating and kind of the culture to be oriented around this, you know, North Star goal, this deep shared purpose, and the hard work of doing that and keeping that going. But at the same time, people who've gone through this process can constantly reconnect the lived experience of this.
And just some clarification about, I mean, the specific process is that it was actually the formal implementation of a vibrancy process is just phase 2 for Strategic Clarity 2.0, and it was just a few months. And because at the same time, it was a lot of work happening in the whole sense of the whole community. So it was like a slower pace because it was connected with other processes. But after that formal process that was applied, it has been mostly like kind of conversations and follow-ups to support thinking. But the only phase that was like fully implemented, it was phase 2. And with that, the school and the teams are able to follow up some of these threads and conversations and keep on implementing without losing this full vision. But that's also important just to bring here.
And I think there would be great value in having, you know, more phases, you know, phased in, the vibrancy coming in on a somewhat regular basis, you know, just to help kind of keep that knowing alive. Because without that, it falls on just a couple of people, tends to fall on a couple, because people forget, you know, and we have to help each other remember, oh yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So it might be to have a kind of infusion, and so I've been trying to do that, you know, coming back in. I've been moving in and out, but yeah, so it's interesting.
Well, thank you, Leslie and Annabelle. Is there any final thoughts on this that you'd want to share before we wrap up?
Well, just thank you, team, for being doing this. I think this is a very exciting initiative, and I just still have this belief that this school can really in the future, they can be taken as an example of how to really be truthful to what Waldorf education, and Waldorf education is not just the curricula, but it's also the governance, it's also this spiritual holding of everything that they do. So I think that they can be an example of how to do that fully. So, and they are moving towards that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's beautifully put, and I totally believe it too. This place, the people that are here and drawn here, I think it can be a beacon of what Waldorf education could be, and it, you know, in the world. I think a lot of them see that and the potential, and are really working hard towards that. It's a work. It's a practice.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, and have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.